Okay, off you go, Anastasia.
I go. All right. So hello, everyone, and thanks for joining and tuning in today. What I'm here to talk about today is travel kits for crystal surgery. And the reason that this topic has come up for me is that I recently got back from a big trip. I spent 3 weeks in Japan in November, which was really, really wonderful. And I actually ended up needing to use my crystals to heal myself. So we were at an onsen, which is a hot spring bath in Japan. And it was our first night there, and we were having dinner. It was lovely, lovely dinner. And part of the dinner was in a hot pot. And I burned my finger on the hot pot, and rather badly too. It blistered immediately. My finger swelled up. It was all red. I spent the rest of the meal with one finger in ice water and trying to use my chopsticks with my left hand. It was very awkward, and it was very upsetting for me because the hot spring bath is hot. So if I wanted to spend the next couple of days going in and out of the hot springs, I thought it was going to be very, very difficult to do with a burned finger. I went to the hotel desk and I got some antiseptic and a Band-Aid. And I went back to my room and I thought, okay, how can I help myself with this? And I took out crystals from what I had packed, because I always take crystals with me, because how could I not? I love them. They always want to go with me wherever I go. And I had moderated, I actually have my 2 boxes here. This is what I packed with me to go to Japan. And I'll unpack them so you can see sort of how I have them and what I brought to work with. But I thought I want to be able to have my fun experience at the hot springs. I don't want this to spoil it. So after dinner, I went back to my room and I worked on myself with what I had. And I had not a single anti-inflammatory stone with me, not one, of what you would use for for an acute burn like that. But I did it anyway with using proxies. I kept the bandage on for 24 hours because I just thought I would want to keep it clean and I would want it to be, to help it heal as much as possible. And then 24 hours later, I peeled off the bandage and the burn was gone completely. And I was shocked. And I've been practicing crystal surgery for over a decade, and I had no expectation that I could have such a dramatic effect on myself in such a short amount of time without any of the crystals that I would use for this. It was much, much more than I was expecting. I wish I had taken a picture. When I took the bandage off, not only was there nothing visible on my finger at all, the redness was gone, the swelling was gone, the blister was gone. The only thing I could feel a slight difference in sensation. There was a slight deadening of the nerves in the place where the burn had been. And 2 weeks later, the area turned white and peeled in the course of an hour with completely healthy skin underneath it. So the burn went from something that actually seemed to be pretty bad to nothing, with one session with none of the crystals that I would have expected to use. And I was just shocked and amazed. And not that I wholeheartedly believe in this work. It's what I do for my living and what I have been doing for my living for a long time. But it was such a powerful demonstration as to the effect that we can have, even without the specific tools. So first I'm going to show you my kit. I'm going to show you what I had with me. So I take this with me everywhere that I go, and this is my immune system kit. I tend to get sick very easily, so if I'm in places where I'm going to be in an airport, I'm going to be in any sort of travel place where I'm going to be exposed to a lot of people in a short amount of time, I take an immune boost with me, and I actually pack it always in this little box here, exactly how I have it for you now. And I've got my piece of jet. I've got a proxy crystal for myself. I've got my amethyst. And I've got my copper. And I set it up like this. And I grid. And I turn it on. And that I take it with me on every trip that I go on, to help me not get sick while I'm traveling. And I'll do it once every few days, not every day. It's a little too much. And I always bring a white light stone with me, so I will also infuse white light afterwards. Take on my other kit. This is what I had with me, though I highly recommend not traveling with spheres. I made an exception for myself this time because I felt like this one just wanted to come with me for Japan. And I did keep it in my pocket the whole trip. But in general, I don't take them through the TSA because the TSA thinks they're balls and throws them in the air when they go through my luggage. And I thought this was just an American thing, but it actually happened to me with Japanese TSA agents too, where they were like, yay. And I was like, no, do not throw my crystal in the air. So anyway, no spheres. Usually I would take a rough piece of metamorphosis quartz, but I made an exception for this trip. Anyway, so that's things I always have with me. And then when I was packing for this trip, some additional things that I brought. This is black tourmaline, which was these are my pocket stones that I kept in my pockets the entire time to help me with my jet lag, one on each side, and it was actually really helpful. This is a piece of green moonstone. So this was a personal support stone because I'm going through perimenopause, and moonstone, green moonstone specifically, I found to be very, very helpful for me with my hormones. This is a piece of seraphonite. I have difficulty sleeping, and using it to calm my nervous system before I go to sleep helps me enormously. So I took a piece of that with me. I took one detox stone with me, and that is this piece of shungite. And it's just a little palm stone here. Oh, I have my, this is scolecite, which I grabbed because it is an excellent proxy stone. It loves to be a proxy. So I just had it with me for that purpose. And also actually because I use it for, it's killing me, it's like, you forgot. I have an antiviral treatment that I use to support myself because I have chronic Epstein-Barr. So the two most important pieces of that I took with me for that, but also proxy crystal. This is black obsidian, gold sheen obsidian. I had two other little pieces of tumbled quartz that I just grabbed as general stones, white light, proxies. That's my other piece of green moonstone. I had some chlorite phantom quartz for healing. And I have here my carnelian, a faden, and a piece of candle quartz. I actually also had a piece of white apophyllite, which I must have taken out of my box. So we'll grab one. And these I brought because of a specific technique that I was using to help myself. So these were chosen for something specific, whereas the rest of this was more general. So how did I go about helping? Oh, here's my white apophyllite. It was in the box. It was caught up in my wrapping. So the first thing that I did was choose a proxy crystal for my finger. And I used the scolecite. It's not only a good shape for the fingertip, but nice and large to work on too. And then I needed to assign stones to be my anti-inflammatory stones. And what I did was choose for shape, which was the most important thing for me in choosing the proxy crystals. So, and what I would do is choose whatever shape I had that was most appropriate and connect it directly to my tool. So for instance, this is my zincite needle, it's my wand. And it's the zincite that I'm most familiar with, right? It's the one that I use most frequently. So I have a really strong relationship with this wand and with this stone. So when I would pick up, and this crystal was the closest thing I had shape-wise, right? It's what's got a nice active point, this laser wand here. As I would hold this stone, I would just imagine that I was holding my wand, right? And I would imagine, and I would let this stone connect directly to this one. And I would begin with my anti-inflammatory grid over the stone. And I did that for all of the things. The next step is infusion, right? And we use our green fluorite and our green calcite for the infusion steps. Well, what stones do I have here that work really well for infusion? These, right? You've got a nice flat surface to project through. Quartz is really good at being anything, so I would just ask it, right? So I'd start with my green calcite and say, okay, you're going to be my green calcite stone, and I would connect it to the stone that I know at home and think about this stone while using this one. Right. For my green apophyllite, right, we've got a series of points, and this is the one that I'm used to using when I'm coming in with. So here is a series of points, right? Same shape. So I would think about my green apophyllite. And come into the stone. And so on and so forth with all of them. I don't need to demonstrate the entire technique, but I was pretty, I was pretty excited that I was able to adapt in the moment to what I needed to do. I had my white light stones, right? I had the white apophyllite and the metamorphosis quartz that I would use for my white wand. So I was able to use those pretty effectively. This was what I used for energy generation because it had the right shape, right? So even though it's a pretty small stone, I could use it to generate energy in the same way that I would normally. And I had the tissue regeneration stones because I had specifically brought them, right? So I had my, except for the aqua aura quartz, which again, this was a cluster. So I chose my cluster to be the same tool and to use in the same way. And I would just imagine that this was my wand, that was what I was holding in my hand. And I was able to get such a wonderful effect from these stones. So that's how that worked for me and how I was able to take a technique that I was familiar with that I didn't have any of the stones for and use it on the fly. On a trip when I wasn't expecting to need it. And you can do this with any of your stones and with anything, right? And with some of the extra tools that I had, right? I had some nerve pain. So I used my seraphonite as a support stone for my technique. I had a detox stone, so I could clean. Anyway, and probably everybody I used as part of the session because they all like to jump in and participate because everybody wants to play always. So that's how that particular session worked and how I was able to work in that way. The other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was how would I clear the stones? Oh, I actually did I brought my tiniest bowl, which was sitting here, but wasn't in the box because it doesn't fit. So I cleared the stones using the tiny bowl. Though if I didn't have that with me, then I clear my stones. I hold them here. Let's take somebody who actually could use it. So I hold them in my fingertips and I imagine white light shining through my fingertips. And I hold the stone with white light beaming out through my fingertips until I feel it change. Usually it gets lighter, so it feels less heavy in weight. So if you don't have something to clear in, this is how I clear stones. And I actually make a practice whenever I'm using my tool stones as I put them back on my shelf. So every time I use every one of my stones, when I'm taking it away from working with it actively and putting it at its location on my shelves, I do that. So even though I'm clearing as I'm working too, I give it that extra little bump as I put it away into its special spot. And if you don't have a bowl with you, this is something that you can do on the fly to help clear. Or not to help clear, to do the clearing. But I did pack a bowl with me because I brought a lot of crystals and I thought, well, I have a little one. I don't know, Katie, I saw your question just because it popped up, though I'm going to bring up the chat and just see, was there anything else? And I don't think there's anything else I need to address right then. If anyone has any questions before I move on to the next bit, you can type them now. But then I will talk a little bit about something else. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just how to make your kit. I talked a little bit about how I selected some of these stones and what I selected them for. But when you're traveling, how do you pick your kit? How do you travel with them? I like to use small boxes like this. I don't have quite as much packing material in this as I did when I bring it. But I like that the structure helps to keep them protected in a bag. I also try to keep things pretty small. I am the sort of person who travels only with carry-ons unless I absolutely cannot avoid it. So I try to keep everything little. So I don't bring my biggest, fanciest stones. I bring the smallest versions of them that I've got usually. And I don't bring anything that I would be too upset if it got damaged or lost. The only really sort of fancy stone that I brought with me this time was that sphere, and it was because it specifically asked. Otherwise, I keep things small. You want to watch out things with points. I typically will take a piece of tape and I make a little cone and I stick it on top of the things with points, so that the point is not touching anything. It makes a little protective bit to keep it from getting chipped. If you travel with stones with points, it's really easy for them to get damaged if they shift a little bit in the bag and they bump into something else. So that's something to just be careful with. And you'll notice that there's not a lot, like this point was already chipped. And other than that, the apophyllite is the only, and here. So not a lot of things with points, and this is actually more than I would usually bring too. I tend to bring a lot of things that are more like these types of stones, because they're not going to get damaged in transit if you wrap them properly. Except for my immunity kit, which always at least has one, and then I wrap the tip so it doesn't get damaged, and I put them in the boxes. I did say I would watch out with spheres because TSA agents like to throw them in the air, and stones often get flagged going through. I really thought it was just an American, like that it was just Americans being kind of dicks in the airports. And then it happened in Japan too, and I was like, no, I guess it's just people. They don't understand that it's a rock. They think it's a bottle. But I often do get stopped if you're traveling with a lot of rocks. Be prepared for them to set off the scanners sometimes. Sometimes they don't. They get through without comment. Sometimes they have to take apart my bag and swipe it and make sure that there's no chemicals or anything in them. But a lot time, if you're traveling with a lot of stones and you're going through TSA, just make sure that you know that your bag might get stopped and it might get opened for that reason. And then if you want to have a general kit that lets you do anything, make sure you've got something that's every shape, right? Which isn't a lot, right? You can do any sorts of infusions with little tumbled stones like this, and these are just really simple. I've got a point to use for any technique that has something that needs an active laser point like this. I've got a really good proxy stone that loves to proxy for anything. I've got one detox stone, and I chose shungite because the shungite technique only requires one stone instead of having a few. Though, of course, you could use proxy stones to represent the variety of stones that you use in the other detox techniques. This was just easy, right? So I chose something easy that I could use, both active point and infusion. And I always make sure to bring one white light stone. And again, it was this time I happen to have a couple, but I have a piece of rough metamorphosis quartz that I typically travel with that I use as my white light stone, either for infusion or just to hold if I've had a really rough travel day. Taking the white light with me is really important for me in terms of keeping my energy up. Travel is a lot. It's really hard on my system. So I do recommend always having a nice white light stone with you. And I like something that I can just hold like this, rather than something that's, a point. Like I wouldn't typically bring this as my white light stone, because it's not so easy to just like hold and connect with. Whereas something that you can put in your hand easily, right, is good for that. All right. So that's how I would assemble a kit. If you were putting it together for travel, and how to cover all your bases for things that you need. Again, choosing things that have the correct shapes for what you might want to do generally. Yes, and And don't take, Vivian saying, don't take irreplaceable stones. And yes, like I have a seraphinite sphere that I used to travel with because I keep it with me all the time. Too many people threw it in the air in the TSA. So I stopped traveling with it, and I have a little piece that I can take with me now that, like, if this got lost, I would be sad, but I wouldn't be devastated. But if I lost my seraphinite sphere, I would cry. I would be so devastated I couldn't handle it. But no, while I love all of these stones, none of them are irreplaceable. Most of them are things that I have multiple copies of and much larger copies of in other ways. So yeah, bags can get lost, things can get separated, things can get broken. So yeah. No, I never give my stones away to anybody for any reason. If somebody wants a stone, I have lots of stones that don't belong to me that they can shop for. Or if I'm giving somebody a gift, I can go into my stock. If once a stone has migrated into my personal stock, that's it. It's off the table for anybody else forever. Yeah. All right. If there's any other questions. No, because they're my personal items that I've brought in with me. I didn't purchase them somewhere. I'm asking, did you declare the stones at customs? No. So, because I did travel internationally with these. You don't have to, you declare at customs things that you've purchased in another country. So since all of these were mine that I brought with them, that was not something that I needed to do. In the same way that, like, you wouldn't, declare your bags or your clothing at customs. Like, it's just your personal items that you've taken with you. If you were overseas shopping for stones and purchased a lot and brought them back into a country, that's a different situation. But this is all things that I owned that I took with me, nothing that I purchased while I was over there.
Thank you, Anastasia.
You're
It
welcome.
was truly wonderful. I wish we had the before and after photographs. And
Right before I started working, I thought I should take a picture of my finger. And then I thought, I don't want to take a picture of my burned finger on my vacation. And I didn't do it. And the next day I was like, I should have taken a picture of my finger. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I couldn't even see it. I couldn't see the burn. It was completely gone. And I was floored.
everybody, if you're doing anti-inflammatory for acute on a visible area of skin, whether it's for a burn, a rash, a scar, and anything that's visible, and you're going to do the green procedure and you're going to change, you will see the change in 20 minutes. So you must do the before and after photograph. You must. Now, sometimes it won't show on the photograph in the way that it's that you're seeing it when you're reading the energy. But other times it will be just like what Anastasia is saying. You have to have the presence of mind to take the photograph. It's better to have the photograph be not work out for you than to regret not taking the photograph. So I don't know how many times I've regretted not taking the photograph before anti-inflammatory for acute. But the one time I got it right is in the textbook when my accountant asked for help with her sprained ankle, and within an hour that ankle was a completely different shape and size, and 4 days later again. And those photographs are in the textbook in the anti-inflammatory for acute. And you must get your own set of photographs for showing people. It's very, very helpful and very, very useful, because people will naturally ask, but can you prove this? And if you show them that's the one where you can literally prove it in such an objective manner. So if you show them this is the before, and 1 hour later this is what it looked like, or the next day this is what it looked like, then they go, yeah, there's something going on there for sure. One of the most visible things we ever did was on a cruise. Terry's not on this Zoom call, but she was on the cruise and she saw this happening. And we could actually see rake marks on the person. He had a very black look to the skin on his legs because he had circulation issues. And where we did the sweeping with the quartz cluster, you could actually see where the points, the crystal points, had entered the energy field, and you literally saw rake marks on his skin. And everybody had their cameras out and were photographing one after the other. And those photos weren't as exciting as photographs as it was seeing those white lines appearing on the skin in real time in front of our eyes as we moved the crystal over his legs. It was one of the more bizarre and interesting crystal surgery moments ever. It was a long time ago as well. So there are these exciting things, and you do want to get your set of before and after photographs, and you never know which person in which situation is going to yield it. So if it's something visible on the skin or on the surface that you can visibly see, that's when you take a photograph and see it. But in any case, Anastasia, what a wonderful story and what a wonderful experience. That's really, really helpful. And the travel kit is very, very helpful as well. All kinds of things happen when we travel, and all kinds of things happen with crystal surgery and crystal healing travel kits. I had a travel kit with me, and that's when I found out, by having a travel kit with me on an overnight stay, I discovered that I could read crystals and hear what crystals were speaking to me. And it was through a travel kit that all came together and started to happen for me. And what happened was I took my travel kit, emptied it out on the table, and as the crystals fell onto the table, I went, I can read this. It was a very strange experience. I kind of went into an altered state of consciousness, and I went, this, I can read this like I can read a book. This is weird. I can read these crystals. And that's how it began. So travel kits have got a lot of different uses besides that, but I hope that you all picked up on the piece where Anastasia connected to her crystals at home via her travel kit. That was a very important piece of information, and that is what we want to be able to do. And from that point of view, you might only need 3 crystals in your travel kit if you know how you're going to connect in, because intention is the key, and your crystals at home are always there available to you. Always. So you just need to be able to think of them. They've already taught you, they've already groomed you. You're carrying them in your field and in your intelligence and in your being, and you can connect with them any which way you want. Isn't that right, Anastasia?
Yeah, and that was sort of the key for doing it. And it's really easy. It's like playing make-believe when you were a kid, like when you picked up a stick and pretended it was a sword or a wand, right? So I pick up this crystal and I pretend it's my wand. And that's
Yes.
all it takes, is that sort of imagination, that sort of playful imagination that we've all been cultivating our entire lives, right?
Yes.
It's very easy. It's
Yeah.
very easy to do if you're feeling intimidated. I promise. Pretend that you're 5 and everything will work out.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anastasia. That was truly wonderful. Both of you, Diane and Anastasia, how great is that? That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to unpin you, Anastasia. And then if anybody has any questions, now's a good time, and we can wrap up this call. Thank you for joining us, and I want to wish you all a very, very happy New Year. I hope this year is full of magic and blessings for each and every one of you. No questions. How excellent is that? All right. Thank you, everyone. We are complete. Bye for now.